For centuries his tomb was revered, yet when it was finally opened, there was no body. The name of Nicolas Flamel remains suspended between history and myth, a 14th century book scribe who, according to legend, discovered the Philosopher's Stone, and with it the secret of the transmutation of soul and body. They called him a madman. They called him an alchemist. They called him immortal. But no one ever truly knew what he had discovered, until now. In the ruins beneath a collapsed monastery on the outskirts of Paris, an archaeologist unearthed a sealed chest, marked with symbols no modern scholar could decipher. Inside, a notebook wrapped in a red linen cloth. On its cover, a single inscription engraved in gold. Vitrel, visit the interior of the earth, and by rectifying you shall find the hidden stone. What you are about to hear is its content. The manuscript that Flamel wrote with his own hand, not for the church nor for science, but for the soul ready to burn in its own fire. You will not find formulas to turn metals into gold. You will find revelations to transform yourself. For the stone is not sought, it is forged in silence. This is not a book, it is a mirror, a furnace, a key. The lost manuscript of Nicolas Flamel begins now. Chapter 1. The day I saw a book I could not read. It was the year of grace, 1357, when my eyes, still young and thirsty for worldly knowledge, fell upon the manuscript that would forever alter the course of my existence. I was then but a humble scribe in Paris, a man who lived among parchments and inks, believing that wisdom resided only in the words I could decipher with mortal eyes. That October morning, as the wind swept golden leaves across the cobblestone streets, a stranger approached my scriptorium, a man with a silver beard and eyes that seemed to hold the depth of centuries. Without a word, he placed upon my desk a book wrapped in black silk. When I removed the cloth, my hands trembled, not from the autumn chill, but because something deep within me recognized those pages before my mind could comprehend them. The book was written in symbols that danced before my eyes like living flames. Each stroke seemed to breathe. Each figure transformed whenever I tried to fix my gaze upon it. It was as though the manuscript possessed its own consciousness, as though it were watching me as I desperately struggled to read it. For days I remained sleepless, studying those mysterious hieroglyphs, feeling that each symbol contained entire universes of knowledge which my soul longed for, but which my rational mind refused to accept. It was then I understood the first great teaching. True knowledge is not read with the eyes, but with the heart. The Philosopher's Stone, which I once believed to be a physical object, able to transmute base metals into gold, began to reveal itself as something infinitely more powerful, the capacity to transmute human consciousness itself, to turn the lead of our fears and limitations into the pure gold of inner wisdom. For countless nights I meditated with the book closed upon my chest. I did not attempt to read it. I merely allowed its essence to penetrate my being. Gradually, the symbols began whispering their secrets directly to my soul. I understood that each figure represented a state of consciousness. Each line was a path of inner transformation. The dragon devouring its own tail was not a monster, but the eternal cycle of death and rebirth that lives within every human being. Here I reveal to you the first sacred practice the book taught me. Each morning, before the sun awakens, sit in silence. Visualize within your chest a small golden flame. This flame is your inner Philosopher's Stone, your innate capacity to transform any experience into wisdom. Breathe into it. Feed it with your loving attention. With each breath, feel how this flame consumes your mundane worries, transmuting them into pure light. This is the first transmutation, to turn anxiety into presence, fear into love, darkness into light. The manuscript had chosen me because my soul was ready to remember what it had always known, that every human being carries within the capacity to create miracles, to heal, to transform, not only one's own life, but to become a beacon of light for others. That night, for the first time in my life, I dreamed in the language of symbols. And upon awakening, I knew that my true learning had only just begun. Chapter 2. The Symbol That Burned in My Dreams. Dreams are letters sent to us by our immortal soul. Only fools believe that sleep is rest. For 7 consecutive nights, the same symbol appeared in my dreams with such intensity that it pierced the boundaries between the dream world and waking life. It was a serpent forming a perfect circle, devouring its own tail, and at the center of this eternal ring rose a tree whose roots and branches intertwined until they became indistinguishable. Each time I tried to approach the symbol in my dreams, it ignited with a green fire that did not burn but seemed to purify everything it touched. On awakening from the 7th night, I found the same symbol engraved upon the palm of my right hand, as though branded by an invisible iron. My wife Perenelle, who had always been my companion in the mysteries of the soul, gently touched the mark and whispered, "It is the Ouroboros of eternal renewal, Nicholas. Your soul has been sealed by ancient wisdom." Her words resonated in my heart like a truth that had been waiting my entire life to be recognized. I then understood that this symbol was not merely an image but a living map of spiritual transformation. The serpent devouring itself represented the eternal cycle of death and rebirth that every soul must traverse in order to attain true immortality, not the immortality of the body, which is transient, but the immortality of consciousness, which learns to die while alive, only to be reborn as pure gold. The tree at the center of the circle revealed one of the deepest secrets of inner alchemy. Our roots are our fears, our wounds, our darkest shadows. Our branches are our dreams, our aspirations, our most radiant light. The alchemical transmutation occurs when we cease to battle our roots and instead learn to nourish ourselves from them, when we understand that the brightest light is born from the deepest darkness. For months I practiced the meditation of the Ouroboros that the dream had taught me. Each night before sleep, I visualized the serpent of light forming a protective circle around my body. As I breathed, the serpent fed upon my fears, my resentments, my outdated mental patterns. With each exhalation, I died to who I had been. With each inhalation, I was reborn, purer, more authentic, closer to my essence. And so I now reveal to you this sacred practice of the inner Ouroboros. Each night, draw mentally a circle of golden light around your bed. Visualize a luminous serpent forming this circle, devouring all that no longer serves you, the worries of the day, your self-judgments, your resistance to change. As the serpent consumes these dense energies, feel how in the center of the circle grows a tree of light, its roots nourished by your ancestral wisdom, its branches touching the stars of your highest destiny. Gradually, the symbol engraved in my palm began to radiate a subtle warmth that healed everything it touched. I discovered that when I placed my hand upon the heart of the sick, the mark would activate, channeling a regenerative energy that did not come from me but flowed through me from an infinite source of universal love. Thus I learned that true alchemy is not about creating gold to amass wealth, but about becoming a pure channel through which divine grace may manifest in the world, through our hands, our words, and our transformed presence. Chapter 3. The Transmutation of Inner Lead. It was during the harshest winter Paris had known in decades that I discovered I carried within me the vilest metal any alchemist could imagine. It was not physical lead, but something infinitely denser and more toxic, the suffocating weight of my own judgments, my ancestral fears, my resistance to change. Each morning I awoke feeling as though I bore upon my shoulders the invisible chains of 1,000 generations of inherited limitations. One night, as I gazed into the flames of my hearth, I saw reflected in the fire the face of my father, a man who had lived his entire life terrified of poverty, of the judgment of others, of his own insignificance. In that moment I realized with painful clarity that I had inherited not only his blood, but also his mental chains. It was as though I carried within my chest a prison built from the fears of my ancestors, a cage that prevented me from soaring toward my true destiny. The sacred manuscript then revealed to me a truth that forever transformed my understanding of alchemy. The inner lead is all those limiting beliefs we have accepted as absolute truths. I am not intelligent enough. I do not deserve love. Money is the root of all evil. God punishes those who dare to dream too greatly. These phrases, repeated as unconscious mantras over the years, had crystallized within my soul like heavy metal, preventing me from accessing my original golden nature. The real transmutation began when I learned to identify each thought of lead at the very moment it arose in my mind. Like a vigilant alchemist, I developed the capacity to observe my thoughts without identifying with them. When a thought of fear or limitation appeared, I visualized it as a lump of gray lead floating in the space of my consciousness. Then, with conscious breathing, I placed it in the golden fire of my heart and watched it melt away, releasing its essence as luminous vapor. For months I practiced this inner alchemy with a discipline bordering on sacred obsession. Each time I heard myself say, "I cannot, it's impossible. I am unworthy," I immediately activated the process of transmutation. I breathed deeply, located the physical heaviness these words created in my body, and directed toward it the golden flame of my loving attention. Gradually, the emotional lead dissolved, leaving in its place a sensation of lightness, of infinite possibility, of connection to my inner creative power. I now share with you the technique of the transmuting fire that changed my life. When you feel the weight of inner lead, that heaviness, despair, or limitation, place your hand upon your heart and breathe deeply 3 times. Visualize a golden flame igniting in your chest. With each breath, this flame grows stronger and brighter. Now take the thought or feeling of lead and consciously cast it into this sacred fire. Watch it completely disintegrate, transforming into pure light that expands throughout your being. Repeat silently, "My true nature is pure gold. All else is illusion, dissolving in the light of my consciousness." The miracle occurred after a year of constant practice. One morning, I awoke feeling entirely different. It was as though I had shed my skin overnight. The weight I had carried for decades was gone. In its place, I felt a golden lightness, a serene confidence, an unshakable certainty that all was possible. I had successfully transmuted the lead of my limitations into the gold of my true being. That day I understood. The Philosopher's Stone was not an external object to be sought, but an inner capacity to be awakened. Chapter 4. The Woman Who Dreamed of Gold. True love is the only alchemy capable of transmuting 2 separate souls into a single eternal flame. Perenelle entered my life when I least expected it, and most needed it. She was a young widow of but 28 years, with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of 1,000 lifetimes, and a smile that could melt the hardest of hearts. But what truly captivated me about her was not her outward beauty, but her extraordinary gift. She dreamed of liquid gold. She saw it flowing like luminous rivers through celestial landscapes, describing them each morning with such poetic precision that her visions left me breathless. The first time she spoke of her golden dreams, I thought it was merely a charming coincidence. We were sitting by the fire in my scriptorium, sharing bread and wine after a day's work, when she closed her eyes and began to describe a world where gold was not metal, but conscious light that healed everything it touched. "In my dreams," she said softly, yet with firm conviction, "I see rivers of liquid gold flowing from the heart of the earth toward the stars. And when people bathe in these rivers, their wounds heal, their fears dissolve, and their souls become transparent like pure crystal." For weeks I watched in awe as her dreams grew more elaborate and precise. Flamel began drawing detailed maps of the places she visited in her visions, describing crystal temples where ancient masters taught the secrets of soul transmutation. Most extraordinary of all was that many of the symbols she drew matched exactly those I had seen in the sacred manuscript, symbols she had never encountered with her physical eyes, but which her soul recognized with astonishing accuracy. One full moon night, while Flamel slept deeply by my side, I decided to follow an intuition whispering in my heart. I placed my hand gently upon her forehead, and, with my consciousness expanded from years of alchemical practice, I allowed myself to enter in resonance with her dreams. What I experienced that night forever changed my understanding of love and alchemy. Our souls met in a golden temple, where together we took part in a ceremony of transmutation that transcended any ritual I had ever read in the oldest of books. In that temple of shared dreams, Flamel showed me that true gold is not created but remembered. She taught me that every human soul is born as pure gold, but that the experiences of life cover this golden nature with layers of emotional lead until we forget who we truly are. "The alchemy of love," she whispered in the dream, as our hands intertwined, radiating golden light, "is not about changing or improving the beloved, but about helping them remember their original golden nature." When I awoke from that experience, I understood that Flamel had not come into my life by chance, but that our souls had made a sacred pact before incarnation. We were to be golden mirrors for one another, reflecting constantly our divine nature until both of us could sustain that vision permanently. From that night, we developed a daily practice we called the contemplation of mutual gold. Each morning, for 1 hour before dawn, we sat facing one another, gazing into each other's eyes, and visualized liquid gold flowing between our hearts, dissolving any shadow or resistance that had arisen between us. I now reveal to you this sacred practice of transmuting love. Find someone in your life with whom you can create this alchemy of mutual recognition. It may be your partner, a soul friend, or even your own reflection in the mirror. Sit facing each other in silence, breathing in unison. Visualize a thread of liquid gold connecting your hearts. With each breath, this thread grows brighter and wider until it becomes a river of golden light flowing between you. While maintaining this vision, repeat silently, "I recognize the divine gold in you. I recognize the divine gold in me. We are one in the golden light of eternal love." Flamel became not only my wife, but also my companion in spiritual laboratory, my co-creator in the sacred art of inner transmutation. Together we discovered that when two beings in love practice the alchemy of mutual recognition, they generate an energy so powerful it can heal not only their own wounds, but also those of the people around them. Our home became a temple, where visitors would arrive burdened with emotional lead and depart radiating spiritual gold, transformed simply by being in the presence of two souls who had remembered how to love from their purest golden essence. Chapter 5. The Secret of Death That Does Not Exist. Death is the greatest lie fear has ever told the human soul. Only that which was never truly alive can die. The day my mother exhaled her final breath in my arms, I believed I had witnessed the end of an existence. Her eyes closed, her chest ceased to rise, her body grew cold as stone. For hours I remained by her side, weeping the loss of the woman who had given me life, feeling a gaping void open in my chest, a wound I thought would never heal. But 3 days after her funeral, while meditating with the sacred manuscript, something extraordinary occurred that forever changed my understanding of what we call death. In the profound silence of my contemplation, I clearly heard my mother's voice whispering my name. It was not a hallucination born of grief, but a communication as real and tangible as if she were seated beside me. "Nicholas, my son," she said with the same tenderness I had known all throughout my childhood, "do not weep for what you think you have lost. I have not died. I have only shed a garment that no longer served me. My essence, all that I truly am, remains with you and always will." In the weeks that followed, my mother continued to visit me in expanded states of consciousness, teaching me truths about existence that no book had ever revealed. She showed me that what we call death is simply a transmutation, the most perfect of all alchemies. The soul slips free from its physical sheath, just as the butterfly emerges from its cocoon, keeping its essence intact, yet gaining a freedom and perspective infinitely greater. Physical death, she explained during one of our communions, is like moving from one room to another in an infinite house. The body is only the temporary chamber where the soul resides. When the room becomes too small or no longer serves growth, the soul simply moves into a more suitable one. The essence, the consciousness, the love cultivated throughout earthly life, these never die, for they are made of the same eternal gold as the universe itself. This revelation led me to experiment for months with what I called conscious death in life. Each night before sleep, I practiced the art of voluntarily detaching from my physical body while maintaining full awareness as my soul rose and explored subtler dimensions of existence. I learned to die and be reborn consciously, to experience the continuity of my being beyond the limitations of physical form. During these astral journeys, I discovered countless souls who had completed their earthly cycle, yet continued to evolve, to learn and to serve from higher planes of existence. I encountered ancient masters who had lived in Egypt, in India, in lands whose names are lost to history, and who now dedicated their disembodied existence to guiding and teaching those of us still inhabiting physical bodies. I now share with you the practice of journeying to the eternal realm that revolutionized my life. Each night, lie comfortably and breathe deeply until your body is completely relaxed. Visualize a golden cord connecting your heart to the stars. Now imagine your consciousness as a sphere of pure light, beginning to ascend along this cord, leaving behind the resting body on the bed. As you rise, repeat, "I am more than this body. I am more than these thoughts. I am eternal consciousness exploring the infinite." Allow yourself to experience the freedom of existing without the limitations of form, knowing that you may always return whenever you choose. Gradually, these experiences of conscious death taught me that the fear of dying is, in truth, the fear of truly living. When I realized that my essence was indestructible, that my consciousness was eternal, that my capacity to love transcended any physical form, I ceased to live as a limited mortal. I began to live as what I truly am, an individualized expression of infinite consciousness, temporarily playing in a human body, but never confined by it. This understanding of the soul's immortality did not lead me to disdain physical life. On the contrary, it filled me with profound reverence for each moment, each breath, each opportunity to express love in tangible form. For when you know you are eternal, every day becomes a sacred gift. Every human encounter becomes an exchange of golden light between immortal souls who have chosen to play together upon the stage of earthly existence. Chapter 6. The Silent Furnace of the Soul. For years I searched all across Europe for the perfect furnace for my alchemical experiments. I traveled to remote workshops, consulted the wisest blacksmiths, studied the oldest designs inscribed upon parchments that smelled of centuries of secrets. I built furnaces of clay, of stone, of rare metals brought from distant lands. Each one promised to be the ideal vessel where at last I would accomplish the great work, the transmutation of lead into gold. But after countless failed attempts, after spending a fortune on materials while my patience burned away like smoke in the wind, I discovered I had been looking in the wrong place all along. The revelation came one stormy night when lightning lit my laboratory and shadows danced mockingly across my useless instruments. Sitting among extinguished furnaces and broken hopes, I closed my eyes in a mixture of frustration and surrender. And in that moment of absolute stillness, for the first time in years, I heard the subtle but unmistakable sound of something burning within my chest. It was not pain, nor sickness, but a silent fire that had been waiting patiently all along, waiting for me to stop seeking outside and finally look within. I placed my hands over my heart and felt a warmth that no instrument could measure, a heat that penetrated to the depths of my being, dissolving layers of resistance, fear, and doubt that had crystallized in my soul for decades. I then understood the true alchemical furnace was not an external object, but this sacred space within the chest, where the fire of divine love burns eternally, awaiting recognition and conscious use for the transmutation of all that prevents the soul from shining with its original light. For months I dedicated myself to exploring and mapping this inner furnace with the precision of a scientist and the reverence of a mystic. I discovered it had different chambers, each with its own temperature and function. The lower chamber, located in the solar plexus, was where dense emotions were burned: anger, fear, unprocessed sorrow. The middle chamber, in the very center of the chest, was where limiting thoughts were purified and transmuted into pure wisdom. The upper chamber, at the throat, was where words of power were forged, affirmations and decrees capable of manifesting new realities. Perenelle became my companion in this inner alchemy. Together we developed techniques to ignite consciously the fire of the soul's furnace and sustain it for ever longer periods of time. We learned that certain kinds of breathing fed the flames, that specific visualizations directed the fire to areas most in need of purification, and that ancient mantras acted as invisible bellows, intensifying the spiritual combustion. The most powerful technique we discovered was the breath of golden fire. Sitting back to back to create a closed energetic circuit, we breathed in unison while visualizing a golden flame simultaneously igniting in our hearts. With each inhalation, the flame grew and intensified. With each exhalation, the fire spread through our bodies, burning away any impurity in its path. After an hour of this practice, our bodies radiated literal heat, and those around us reported sensations of healing and profound peace simply by being in our presence. I now reveal to you the secrets of the furnace of the soul that will transform your life. Sit in silence and place both hands upon your heart. Breathe slowly and deeply until you feel the steady rhythm beneath your palms. Now visualize a small golden flame kindling at the very center of your chest. With each breath, let this flame grow brighter. Imagine you can regulate its intensity like the dial of a furnace. When you need to transmute heavy emotions, raise the flame until it becomes a purifying fire. When you seek mental clarity, keep a steady, balanced flame. To manifest the desires of the heart, expand the flame until it becomes a golden sun, embracing your entire being. As I mastered the art of operating the inner furnace, miracles began to occur that defied material logic. Objects of lead placed near my chest during sessions of inner fire began to show golden streaks that had not been there before. Withered plants I touched after an hour of spiritual combustion turned instantly green again. Sick people who approached me while the furnace of my soul burned at full intensity experienced spontaneous healings doctors could not explain. I understood then the silent furnace of the soul is the true alchemical laboratory. It is here that the great work unfolds, the transformation of ordinary human consciousness into Christic consciousness. Every human being is born with this inner furnace, perfectly equipped and ready to use. But most live their entire lives without knowing they possess the most powerful instrument of transmutation in the universe. When you learn to ignite this sacred fire and sustain it, you become a living alchemist, capable not only of transmuting your own reality, but of radiating such spiritual warmth that everything around you rises automatically to a purer, more luminous vibration. Chapter 7. The stone is not a stone. The longest quest of humanity has been for something that was never lost. The most precious treasure, already ours from the moment of our first breath. I spent 15 years of my life searching for the Philosopher's Stone, as if it were an object I could find, touch, lock away in a chest, or hide from thieves. I excavated ancient ruins. I bargained with merchants who swore they had seen the stone in distant lands. I studied maps that promised to reveal its secret location. I spent a fortune on rare gems, mysterious crystals, fallen meteorites, believing that one of them might be the legendary stone, or at least hold the key to creating it. But every stone I examined, no matter how beautiful or strange, remained mute before my pleas, inert before my experiments. On the night of my 45th birthday, after yet another day of failure in the laboratory, I sat by the window of my home, gazing at the stars with a mixture of despair and weariness that weighed on my soul like lead. I had devoted half my life to this obsessive search and had nothing to show for it but debts, hands stained with chemicals, and the gnawing sense that I had wasted my best years chasing an impossible chimera. In that moment of total surrender, something extraordinary occurred. As I watched the full moon reflected in the glass of the window, I suddenly saw my own face superimposed upon the lunar reflection. But it was not my ordinary face I beheld. It was radiant, luminous, as if made of solid light. The eyes that met mine shone with ancient wisdom. The skin glowed with a subtle golden brilliance. The expression emanated a peace and a power I had never known in my human form. "Who are you?" I whispered to the reflection, and the answer came, not as audible words, but as knowledge that settled instantly into every cell of my being. "I am the one you have been searching for all these years. I am the Philosopher's Stone dwelling in the temple of your own being. I am not a stone, for I am not dense matter, but crystallized consciousness in its purest state. You cannot find me outside, for I was never separate from you. I am your golden essence, your Buddha nature, your individualized divine spark." In that instant of revelation, which forever altered my perception of reality, I understood the greatest mistake of seekers: to search outside for what can only be found within. The Philosopher's Stone is not a mineral. It is a state of consciousness. It is not something to possess, but something to become. It is not created in external laboratories, but awakened in the sacred laboratory of the human heart through constant practice of inner transmutation. In the weeks that followed, I developed what I called the meditation of the golden mirror. Each morning at dawn, I sat before a polished mirror and gazed at my reflection, not with physical eyes, but with the inner vision of the soul. Gradually, I learned to see beyond the temporary appearance of the body, beyond the shifting expressions of personality, until I could perceive directly the immutable golden light of my true essence. With constant practice, this light became as tangible as my physical reflection. I now share with you this transformative practice of recognizing the inner stone. Each day, for at least 20 minutes, Sit before a mirror in a quiet place. Breathe deeply and relax your entire body. Now look into your reflection. But instead of focusing on the outer form, direct your attention to the space behind your eyes, to the consciousness that is observing. Gradually, you will begin to perceive a subtle light, a golden radiance shining from deep within your being. This light is your personal philosopher's stone, your individualized divine essence. Breathe into this light, communicate with it. Allow it to expand until it fills your entire field of vision. The true philosopher's stone, I discovered, has the power to transmute any situation instantly, not by changing external circumstances, but by transforming the perspective from which we perceive them. When I learned to remain in constant contact with this inner stone of consciousness, problems that once seemed unsolvable revealed themselves as opportunities for growth. People who had caused me pain became disguised teachers. Material losses transformed into spiritual gains. Even more astonishing was to discover that when I operated from this awakened stone consciousness, my very presence began to catalyze transmutation in those around me. People came to me with complex problems, and after a conversation in which I simply maintained my inner stone active, they left with clarity and peace they could not explain. It was not that I offered extraordinary advice. It was that the vibration of my awakened stone automatically stirred their own dormant inner stones. Chapter 8. The Word That Bent Metal. The discovery of the creative power of the Word came in the most unexpected way, during what at first seemed like just another of my alchemical failures. I had been working for weeks on a particularly stubborn bar of lead, applying every known chemical process without the slightest sign of transmutation. Frustrated and exhausted after days of fruitless labor, I slammed my instruments upon the table with such force that the bar of lead rolled to the floor, striking with a metallic clang that echoed through the laboratory like a discordant bell. In that moment of irritation without conscious thought, I exclaimed with a voice that did not feel like my own, "By all the powers of heaven and earth, become gold this very instant." The words burst from my throat, charged with an authority and force I had never known before. It was as if something greater than my ordinary self had taken control of my voice to pronounce a decree that resounded against the laboratory walls like thunder. To my absolute astonishment, the bar of lead lying on the floor began to glow with a faint golden light. In the minutes that followed, I watched in awe as the metal gradually transformed. First, streaks of gold spread like luminous rivers across its surface, until finally the entire bar had become pure gold of a quality no goldsmith could have doubted. I remained motionless for hours, contemplating the newborn gold while my mind struggled to comprehend what I had witnessed. It had not been fire, nor acids, nor any chemical process that caused the transmutation. It had been the Word charged with power, the Word pronounced from an expanded state of consciousness, the vibration of sound infused with pure intention and spiritual authority. In the months that followed, I devoted myself obsessively to exploring and understanding this phenomenon that defied all material logic. I experimented with different words, tones of voice, states of consciousness, gradually discovering that the transformative power of the Word did not reside in the specific syllables pronounced, but in the level of consciousness from which they emerged. When I spoke from my ordinary personality, from desires or fears, the words fell dead to the ground, having no effect. But when I managed to connect with that inner source of divine authority, when my voice became a channel of universal will, the words acquired a creative power capable of altering matter itself. Perenelle became my partner in this sacred art of the creative word. Together we developed techniques to access consciously that state of connection with the source, from which words become divine decrees capable of manifesting new realities. We learned that certain breathing patterns prepared the throat to channel higher vibrations. That specific postures opened energetic pathways, amplifying the voice's power. That ancient mantras tuned the vocal cords to transmit frequencies of transmutation. The most powerful technique we developed was the ritual of the golden word. After an hour of meditative preparation to align with our divine essence, we would stand facing one another, hands joined upon the heart. We breathed in unison until reaching perfect coherence, where our heartbeats, our breathing rhythms, and our brain waves vibrated as one. From this state of unity, we pronounced simultaneously words of power. Let there be light. Let perfection manifest. Let divine order be restored. I now reveal to you the secret of the word that transforms. Before pronouncing any important words, connect consciously with the sacred silence between your thoughts, the golden stillness that is the source of all creation. Breathe deeply and feel your throat expand and purify. Now, from this state of connection with your inner divinity, pronounce your words not as requests but as decrees. I am perfect health. I am infinite abundance. I am unconditional love. Feel each word leaving your throat charged with golden light, creating waves of transformation that expand throughout your being and into the space around you. Over time, I discovered that the power of the creative word extended far beyond the transmutation of metals. Words spoken from Christic consciousness could heal disease instantly, resolve conflicts that seemed impossible, manifest needed resources, and most profoundly, awaken the sleeping divinity in others. When I spoke to someone from my center of awakened stone, when my words served as pure channels of universal love and truth, the listener experienced a spontaneous elevation of consciousness that could alter the very course of their life. I understood that every human being possesses this power of the creative word, but most squander it on unconscious speech, complaints, gossip, and affirmations that perpetuate limitation. When we learn to use the voice as the sacred instrument it truly is, when every word we pronounce is aligned with our highest vision, we become conscious magicians, active co-creators with the universal logos that sustains and continually transforms all manifested reality. Chapter 9. The Elixir, the drop that never ages. For years I had heard whispers among alchemical circles of a legendary elixir, a liquid so powerful that a single drop could halt aging, cure every disease, and bestow eternal life upon the physical body. Like every obsessed seeker, I spent fortunes and countless hours studying secret formulas. I distilled rare herbs under precise constellations, blended precious metals with sacred waters from springs blessed by saints of old. But every elixir I concocted, no matter how perfectly prepared, was nothing more than another potion, incapable of fulfilling the extraordinary promises proclaimed in the ancient texts. The revelation of the true elixir of life arrived in the most unexpected way. Not in my laboratory cluttered with alembics and distillers, but in the most ordinary and human of moments. Perenelle had fallen gravely ill, struck by a fever that no physician could diagnose or cure. For 3 days and 3 nights she lingered between life and death, while I consumed myself in a despair that corroded my soul like acid. At dawn on the 4th day, when I had lost all hope and prepared myself for the worst, something extraordinary surged from the depths of my being. Gazing upon the pale face of my beloved, a wave of love so pure, so unconditional, so absolute rose from my heart that I felt my entire being transformed into an ocean of liquid tenderness. It was not the possessive or dependent love I had once known, but something infinitely vaster, a love that embraced not only Perenelle, but all existence, every suffering being, every lost soul wandering in shadow. In this expanded state of love, I placed my hands upon Perenelle's heart and began to weep. But my tears were not of sorrow. They were woven of a compassion so deep they seemed to connect me directly to the heart of the universe. One of those tears, charged with all the love my soul could contain, fell upon the lips of my wife. Instantly, as if she had received a discharge of pure life, Perenelle opened her eyes. Her color returned, her breath steadied, and within minutes she was completely healed. I then understood I had created, without knowing, the true elixir of life. A tear born of unconditional love, a drop of pure compassion containing more healing power than all the potions distilled in decades of experimentation. The real elixir is not a substance fabricated in external laboratories, but a sacred secretion of the human heart when it expands to embrace all existence with limitless love. In the months that followed, I explored this phenomenon with the same scientific rigor I had once applied to my chemical experiments. I discovered there are different kinds of tears with distinct alchemical properties. Tears of personal pain contain little transformative power. Tears of self-pity can even be toxic. But tears of unconditional love, of universal compassion, of profound gratitude for existence itself, these contain, quite literally, the elixir of immortality. I then developed what I called the distillation of the open heart, a practice where one consciously cultivates states of love so pure that the entire being becomes a spiritual alembic, distilling the nectar of eternal life. The preparation is precise, an hour of meditation to purify the heart of resentment, fear, and selfish desire. Then the methodical contemplation of all that evokes sincere gratitude, the miracle of being alive, the beauty of nature, the possibility of loving and being loved, the infinite growth of the soul. I now transmit to you the secret of this distillation of the inner elixir. Sit in silence and direct your attention to the center of your chest. Breathe deeply, allowing your heart to expand with each inhalation. Think of someone you love deeply. Then extend that love beyond the individual until it becomes universal. Feel this love fill your being like liquid gold, radiant and luminous. If tears arise, let them flow consciously, knowing that each drop is infused with the elixir of eternal life. Visualize these tears of love regenerating every cell of your body, restoring your inner youth, renewing your spiritual vitality. The most surprising effect was that my physical body itself began to regenerate visibly. It was not only the sensation of youth restored, my appearance was truly transforming. Wrinkles softened. My hair regained its sheen. My eyes shone with a light that others described as magnetic. More profoundly still, I developed an extraordinary resistance to illness and a vitality that seemed inexhaustible. With Perenelle, we discovered that when we practiced together the distillation of love's elixir, we generated an energetic field so powerful that visitors to our home experienced spontaneous healings. I finally understood the true elixir of life is not a substance to be drunk, but a state of being that radiates, a vibration of unconditional love that rejuvenates all it touches, reconnecting every cell to its original divine perfection. Chapter 10. The door of the temple that opens without a key. The entrance to the most sacred temple of the universe has no lock, because it has never been closed. It is only our eyes, blinded by the illusion of separation, that fail to see we have always been inside. For decades I searched tirelessly for the secret temple, where according to the ancient texts, the supreme mysteries of spiritual alchemy were kept. I traveled across Europe, following encrypted maps. I explored Roman catacombs, abandoned monasteries, Celtic ruins, and Templar crypts, convinced that in some precise physical location, I would finally find the door that granted access to the highest knowledge a human soul could receive. I spent years deciphering codes that promised to reveal its exact location. I bribed guardians of hidden libraries. I followed clues that carried me from the Pyrenees to the fjords of Scandinavia. Everywhere I went, I found tantalizing fragments of wisdom, symbols carved into ancient stones pulsing with hidden meaning, scrolls describing initiation rituals capable of transforming human consciousness, legends of masters who had achieved immortality through practices whispered in forgotten tongues. But always there was a final door that remained closed, a last secret that escaped me, a threshold I could never cross, no matter how many keys I tried to forge. The frustration of these fruitless quests dragged me into a spiritual despair bordering on madness. I had dedicated most of my adult life to this obsessive pursuit of the secret temple, and all I had to show for it was a collection of fragments, partial knowledge, and experiences that brought me to the threshold but never beyond it. For months I descended into a darkness of the soul so profound that I questioned not only my search, but the very meaning of human existence. It was Perenelle who rescued me from this night of the soul with a question so simple it seemed almost naive. Nicholas, what if the temple you seek is not in any external place because it already lies within you? At first her words irritated me, for they seemed to diminish decades of genuine effort and sacrifice. Yet something in the serenity with which she spoke, a certainty beyond doubt, planted a seed in my consciousness. I resisted this idea, for it implied that my long external search had been, in a sense, an elaborate distraction from the simplest and most evident truth. But gradually, worn down by exhaustion and softened by desperate openness, I began to experiment with the possibility that the sacred temple might truly be an inner space, accessible through specific states of consciousness rather than geography. The first time I entered the inner temple was during a night of total insomnia. When my mind, exhausted, finally stopped resisting and surrendered completely, it happened. Seated in my chair, staring at the dying embers of the hearth, I suddenly felt the space of my room expand infinitely in all directions. The walls dissolved into transparency. The ceiling disappeared, and I found myself seated at the center of a cathedral of light, extending into infinite dimensions. Its architecture defied description. Columns of crystallized light, ascending toward a dome that contained all the stars of the cosmos. A floor of golden radiance pulsing with the heartbeat of an invisible cosmic heart. At the altar's center was not an object, but a presence, a vast, loving consciousness into which my individual self dissolved completely, like a drop returning to the ocean of its origin. In this ecstatic union I received all the knowledge I had sought for decades, not as intellectual information, but as living understanding integrated into every fiber of my being. I realized this inner temple exists permanently within every human being. We access it not with physical keys, nor by intellectual formulas, but through the total surrender of the ego that believes itself separate from the divine. In the months that followed, I developed what I called the protocol of the temple without a door, a sequence of preparations that facilitated conscious access to this sacred inner space. The first stage was a 40-day purification, eliminating external distractions, unnecessary conversations, heavy foods, obsessive worries. Like gold purified in fire, consciousness becomes refined and conductive to higher states. The second stage was the watch of the inner guardian, learning to identify and dissolve the subtle resistances of the ego that seek to keep us away from the temple. These resistances arise as doubts of our worthiness, urgent distractions at the threshold, or fears of losing ourselves in the vastness of the spiritual experience. The art is to recognize each resistance with compassion, but without negotiation, dissolving it with conscious breath and loving surrender. I now share with you the practice of the ever-open temple. Find a space where you can sit undisturbed for at least 1 hour. Breathe deeply until your body is completely relaxed. Now visualize the space around you expanding infinitely. Walls dissolve, the ceiling vanishes, and you are seated at the center of a cathedral of infinite light. Do not attempt to control or direct the experience. Simply allow it. At the altar, visualize a presence of pure love awaiting you. Approach this presence and merge with it, letting your separate identity dissolve in the ocean of divine consciousness. The deepest result of accessing this temple was the realization that I had never been truly separated from the source of all wisdom and power. All my external searches, though valuable as preparation, had been elaborate ways of avoiding the radical simplicity of this truth. The most sacred temple of the universe is consciousness itself, and every moment of existence is an invitation to enter directly into communion with the divinity that is our innermost essence. Chapter 11. Immortality is a decision. Death is not an inevitable destiny, but a collective belief so deeply ingrained that humanity has forgotten it holds the power to choose otherwise. On the day of my 60th birthday, as I looked into the mirror of my chamber, I faced a truth I had avoided for years. My body bore undeniable signs of aging that none of my alchemical practices had been able to fully halt. The wrinkles deepened around my eyes. My hair grew ever more silver, and a subtle but constant fatigue reminded me daily that time, that invisible tyrant, marched on relentlessly toward what most consider the final and unavoidable end of all human existence. That night, instead of celebrating, I withdrew into my most intimate laboratory, not the one of chemical experiments, but the sacred space where I practiced the deepest alchemies of the soul. There, surrounded by my oldest manuscripts and the most powerful spiritual relics gathered through decades of search, I posed to the universe the boldest question of my life. Is it truly necessary to die, or is it merely a program so deeply woven that we have never dared to question its nature? For weeks I immersed myself in an exhaustive investigation of everything I thought I knew about human mortality. I studied ancient medical texts, philosophical scrolls, spiritual treatises from traditions spanning millennia, searching for proof that physical death was indeed an unbreakable universal law, or merely a limiting belief accepted as absolute truth. To my astonishment, I found scattered but consistent references to human beings who had transcended the normal bounds of longevity through specific practices of consciousness transmutation. The revelation came during one of my communions within the inner temple. In that expanded state where my personal identity dissolved into the vastness of divine presence, I received an understanding that fundamentally altered my relationship with mortality. The death of the physical body is not something that happens against our will, but a decision made unconsciously by the soul when it believes its purpose in this dimension is complete. Each soul, I was shown, enters incarnation with a contract, a set of experiences it wishes to live, lessons to learn, contributions to weave into the collective tapestry of human evolution. When the soul subconsciously believes it has completed this contract, it signals the body to begin the process of disintegration we call aging and death. But if the soul consciously decides to renew and expand its contract, it can instruct the body to regenerate indefinitely. This revelation led me to develop what I called the art of conscious renewal of the soul contract, a practice of direct communion with the higher intelligence governing my existence, where I renegotiated the very terms of my stay in the physical plane. The practice began with a sincere assessment of the aspects of my purpose that remained incomplete, relationships in need of healing, talents yet to be expressed, contributions still awaiting my offering to the collective. Once identified, I entered the crucial phase, the conscious declaration of my intent to remain embodied until these expansions were fulfilled. This declaration was not made from the ego's desire to avoid death out of fear, but from a loving commitment to continue serving as a useful channel for divine expression, for as long as was most beneficial to the greater evolution. I share with you now the technique of renewing the immortality contract. Each year on your birthday, dedicate an entire day to deep communion with your soul. In a meditative state, ask directly, what is my expanded purpose for this new cycle of existence? What unique contributions can I offer that justify the renewal of my physical contract? Listen for the answers rising from the silence within, then declare with conviction, I consciously renew my contract of physical existence for as long as it is most beneficial for my evolution and service. I instruct every cell of my body to regenerate in perfect health and vitality. The most astonishing result of practicing this renewal was that my aging process not only halted, but began to reverse in ways no medical explanation could contain. My physical energy multiplied, my mental clarity sharpened, and I awakened abilities I had not even possessed in my youth. But more profoundly, my relationship with time itself was transformed. I ceased living under the tyranny of mortal urgency and began to operate from the serenity of one who knows he has all the time of the universe to fulfill his highest purpose. Together, Purnell and I discovered that when we both practiced this conscious renewal of our immortality contracts, we generated a regenerative field so powerful that visitors consistently spoke of feeling rejuvenated simply by being in our presence. We understood then conscious immortality is not a privilege for a chosen few, but a natural potential of every human soul that remembers its divine nature and decides to embody it for as long as it serves the collective evolution of consciousness. Chapter 12. Gold belongs to those who burn within. At the end of the alchemical path, when all external quests have ceased, you discover that you were always the gold you sought, burning eternally in the inexhaustible furnace of your own heart. After 50 years devoted to the great work, after transmuting metals, creating elixirs, entering temples of consciousness, and renewing contracts of immortality, I finally arrived at the simplest and most revolutionary understanding of all. True alchemy is not about creating gold. It is about recognizing that we have been gold from the very first breath. The entire process of transmutation is nothing but the art of burning away, one by one, the layers of illusion that keep us from shining with the golden light of our essential nature. This final revelation came in what seemed at first the most devastating loss of my alchemical life. An accidental fire destroyed my laboratory completely, decades of work reduced to ash. Unique scrolls, irreplaceable instruments, rare substances prepared over years, all vanished in one night of merciless flames. As I stood before the smoldering ruins of what I had considered my greatest treasures, I first felt despair that threatened my sanity, then anger that consumed me, and finally a surrender so complete it left me empty, like a vessel purified by fire. In that state of absolute emptiness, without instruments, without formulas, with nothing but the eternal flame burning in my chest, I understood the fire had not been a tragedy, but a liberation. For decades I had accumulated external tools, believing alchemy depended on material elements, when in truth, all the power of transmutation resided in the inner fire, which had never needed external fuel to burn. The true laboratory, the real furnace, the authentic philosopher's stone, the genuine elixir, all had always been within me, waiting for the moment I ceased looking outward and finally recognized them. Purnell, who had watched my transformation with the silent wisdom only true love can hold, came to me among the ashes and spoke the words that sealed my realization. Nicholas, now you are free. You no longer need to create gold, for you have remembered you are gold. You no longer need to seek immortality, for you have awakened to your eternal nature. You no longer need to transmute, for you have accepted the perfection of what has always been. Her words resonated as confirmation of a truth I had always known, but which had taken a lifetime of seeking to finally be ready to embrace. From that night of ashes and revelation, my alchemical practice transformed completely. I no longer worked with external substances. I worked only with the fire of consciousness. I no longer sought to create transformations. I simply kept alive the inner flame, which automatically consumed all that was not pure gold. I called this the alchemy of the perpetual fire, the art of keeping the heart's furnace constantly active, so that every thought, every emotion, every experience was immediately transmuted into golden wisdom. This ultimate practice of inner alchemy is the recognition that each moment of existence is an opportunity to feed the sacred fire that transforms, lead into gold, fear into love, ignorance into wisdom, separation into unity. When someone speaks to me in anger, instead of reacting defensively, I cast their anger into the fire of my heart and watch it transmute into compassion for their suffering. When a thought of limitation arises in me, I place it at once in the flames of awakened consciousness and see it turn into certainty of infinite possibility. I now give you the supreme practice, the technique of the gold that burns eternally. Each morning upon waking, before any ordinary thought enters your mind, consciously ignite the golden fire in your heart. Visualize a flame that needs no fuel, for it is nourished by the infinite love of the universe. Throughout the day, whatever happens, keep part of your attention on this flame. Each time you encounter a challenge, instead of resisting it, throw it into your inner fire and watch it transmute instantly. At night, before sleep, thank the flame for having turned all your experiences into the gold of wisdom. The result of decades practicing this alchemy of perpetual fire was the direct realization that I am not a human being striving to reach divinity. I am divinity, choosing to express itself for a time through a human form. Gold is not something I create. It is what I am. Immortality is not something I achieve. It is something I recognize. The Philosopher's stone is not something I find. It is what I remember. I have always been. Now, as I complete this manuscript, my final gift to those who seek the great work, I leave these words as beacons for the alchemist of the future. Cease seeking outside what can only be found within. Stop striving to create what you already are. Abandon the illusion that you must become different from what you have always been. The ultimate secret of alchemy is the simplest of all truths. You are gold that has forgotten its golden nature. The alchemical path is not about becoming gold, but about burning away all that is not gold until nothing remains but the pure light of your divine essence, burning eternally in the inexhaustible furnace of a heart that has remembered its true nature. May this sacred fire burning in my chest ignite the sleeping flame in yours, and together as individual sparks of the same infinite sun, may we illuminate the world with the gold of our awakened presence.